Before he died, Johnny Carson revealed 9 guests who were secretly gay. Hollywood has always sold us fairy tales, perfect love stories, flawless heroes, and glamorous stars who seemed untouchable. But before he died, Johnny Carson, the man who interviewed them all, revealed a chilling truth. Many of Hollywood's most iconic legends were secretly gay, forced into fake marriages, silent suffering, and double lives just to stay alive in the industry. These weren't rumors. Carson knew. He protected them on air while hiding the biggest cover-up in entertainment history. Are you ready to hear the secrets Hollywood never wanted you to know? Before we begin, hit like, subscribe to Legends of Black Excellence, and let's expose the truth behind the myth. Rock Hudson, Hollywood's perfect leading man and the cruel fake marriage. Rock Hudson wasn't just a movie star, he was the symbol of the ideal American man. Throughout the 1950s and 60s, his towering 6'5" frame, chiseled jawline, and gentle charm made him the #1 box office draw in the United States, starring in romantic classics like Pillow Talk and Magnificent Obsession. Women adored him, studios depended on him, and the entire country believed in his image as the perfect husband every woman dreamed of. But behind the cameras, Hudson lived in constant fear. Hollywood in that era was brutally homophobic. Being exposed as gay meant instant blacklisting, loss of income, and public shame. Universal Studios and his agent Henry Wilson understood this, so they created a carefully manufactured persona to protect their golden goose. Every interview photo and magazine cover was scripted to reinforce the illusion of heterosexual perfection. To seal the lie, the studio arranged one of the most infamous lavender marriages in Hollywood history. In 1955, Hudson married Phyllis Gates, who worked as Henry Wilson's secretary. The marriage lasted only 3 years, but it served its purpose. It silenced rumors that were beginning to circulate in gossip columns. Behind the scenes, insiders claimed Gates may have known more than she admitted, and some biographers even suggested she was pressured into the arrangement. Hudson continued living his private life in secret, carefully navigating relationships with men while maintaining the public mask of romantic leading man. The marriage was never about love. It was a shield constructed by the studio machine to protect their most profitable star and maintain the fantasy that sold millions of tickets. Johnny Carson, who hosted The Tonight Show from 1962 to 1992, interviewed Hudson multiple times. The audience at home saw 2 charismatic men laughing and exchanging stories, but Carson knew the truth. Hollywood insiders often confided in Carson off-camera, and he was trusted with secrets few dared to speak aloud. He understood the silent terror Hudson lived with, being one wrong question away from complete destruction. During every appearance, Johnny had to perform the lie as well, asking about Hudson's love life and future wives, while carefully avoiding anything that could expose him. Carson later admitted to friends that these interviews were some of the most emotionally complicated of his career. He felt complicit in the deception, but also protective. He knew that if Hudson was ever outed in that era, his career wouldn't just end, it would be erased. The tragedy came to light in 1985 when Hudson became the first major celebrity to publicly die of AIDS. His illness forced the world to confront the truth he had tried to hide for decades. The press swarmed, fans were shocked, and Hollywood scrambled to rewrite the narrative. But for Johnny Carson, it was a moment of painful clarity. He saw how the system had trapped a man with extraordinary talent and humanity, forcing him to choose between his identity and his career. Hudson's death was not just a personal tragedy, it exposed the price of Hollywood's lies. Carson later told confidants that Rock Hudson's story changed how he viewed the entire industry. He no longer saw glamour, he saw survival, and he never forgot the burden his friend carried just to be loved by the world. Cary Grant and Randolph Scott Bachelor Hall and the love hidden in plain sight. Cary Grant was the man every woman wanted and every man wished to become. With his flawless style, transatlantic accent, and effortless charm, he defined the image of the sophisticated gentleman for decades. Hollywood built an empire around his persona, casting him in romantic comedies, elegant dramas, and high society roles that cemented him as the ultimate ladies' man. He married 5 different women over the course of his career, including actresses Virginia Cherrill and Diane Cannon. Each marriage was heavily promoted in the press, reinforcing the illusion that he was the perfect heterosexual icon. But behind the tuxedos and red carpets, Grant was hiding a personal life the studios would do anything to protect. In an era when homosexuality was not only taboo but career-ending, he could not afford to be seen as anything less than the ideal leading man. Enter Randolph Scott, a rugged star best known for his Western roles and masculine screen presence. On paper, he was everything Grant was not: a cowboy, a man of few words, the embodiment of traditional American masculinity. But the two actors met in the early 1930s while working at Paramount, and their connection was immediate. Rather than simply being colleagues, they moved into a shared home in Santa Monica, a beachfront property that would become legendary. Hollywood insiders called it Bachelor Hall. It wasn't a secret hideout in the shadows. It was open, visible, and photographed. Yet the public was told they were just roommates, sharing expenses. The studio publicity machine worked overtime to frame their living situation as convenient bachelor life rather than what many suspected a committed partnership. What made their arrangement especially shocking was how openly domestic it appeared. Fan magazines of the 1930s and 1940s published photographs of the two men cooking breakfast together, exercising in the yard, lounging casually in matching robes, and relaxing by the pool. These weren't staged movie scenes, they looked like intimate glimpses into a shared life. One article even labeled their home a cozy retreat away from Hollywood chaos, presenting them as a charming duo. Today, those photos would instantly spark conversation. But back then, the studio spun the narrative perfectly. They were described as lifelong pals with bachelor freedom. Hollywood preferred to lie boldly rather than admit a forbidden truth. Still, pressure mounted. As Grant's fame skyrocketed, studios demanded change. He began entering highly publicized marriages, 5 in total, each conveniently timed to quiet rumors. Scott also married twice, though neither union had the warmth seen in his years with Grant. Despite separating homes for appearances, many biographers believe their emotional connection lasted over a decade. Some insiders claim they continued to see each other privately, even after marriage. Johnny Carson, who admired Grant's charisma, later admitted the most fascinating part of Grant's legacy wasn't his films, it was how convincingly Hollywood sold the fantasy of who he was supposed to be. The world saw charm, elegance, and romance. But behind closed doors, Cary Grant and Randolph Scott were living a different kind of love story, one that had to be hidden in plain sight, protected by the biggest lie Hollywood ever told, that its leading men were always straight. Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy, the greatest 26-year lie in Hollywood history. For generations, Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy were celebrated as Hollywood's greatest love story. The elegant rebel and the rugged traditionalist, united by a passion so powerful that not even marriage could stand in their way. Their 26-year relationship has been romanticized in films, books, and documentaries as the pinnacle of on-screen chemistry turned real. But the version the public adored was carefully engineered. In reality, their long partnership was not a forbidden romance, it was a brilliant cover. While studios and fan magazines sold the fantasy of unconditional love, both Hepburn and Tracy were using the relationship to hide deeper truths about their personal lives in an industry where authenticity could destroy everything. Spencer Tracy, a devout Catholic, was legally married to Louise Treadwell from 1923 until his death in 1967. Although they lived separately for decades, divorce was impossible due to his religious convictions. Staying married shielded him from scandal, but it also left him vulnerable. Why wasn't he dating women? Why was he never linked to glamorous actresses like his peers? The solution was simple: give the public a story they would believe. The studio encouraged Tracy to be seen with Hepburn, building a narrative of soulmates who couldn't marry only because of his Catholic guilt. This explanation was emotionally powerful and morally safe. It made Tracy appear loyal and noble while distracting from rumors about his own private life. He gained sympathy, respect, and a permanent cover. Hepburn, meanwhile, was fiercely independent and uninterested in conforming to traditional femininity. She wore pants, rejected Hollywood parties, and avoided dating men publicly. But even she knew that being a single, unmarried woman in Hollywood for decades would raise questions. Throughout her life, Hepburn had deep, long-term relationships with women such as Laura Harding, with whom she lived for years, and later Phyllis Wilborn, whom some biographers describe as her true life partner. Yet none of this made headlines because the Tracy narrative protected her. Whenever the press asked why she never married, the answer was ready: Spencer was the love of my life. That one sentence erased suspicion. Hollywood gave her freedom as long as she played her part in the myth. Their romance was mutually beneficial. They appeared in 9 films together, becoming box office gold. Fans obsessed over their chemistry, unaware that the emotional connection they saw on screen was more about survival than passion. When Tracy struggled with alcoholism, Hepburn cared for him. That loyalty helped sell the illusion even more. But she also maintained her separate life in Connecticut, far from Hollywood's gaze. The beauty of their arrangement was its simplicity. They did not need to pretend to be madly in love. Publicly, they just needed to let people believe it. And Hollywood did the rest. When Tracy died in 1967, Hepburn did not attend the funeral out of respect for his wife, but the media spun it as romantic sacrifice. She later confirmed their relationship in interviews, forever cementing the legend. Yet behind the sentimental stories was the truth. This was the most successful cover-up in Hollywood history. For 26 years, Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy protected themselves, protected each other, and fooled the entire world. Their legacy is not just about love. It is about how far stars had to go to survive in a system built on lies. Marlon Brando, the acting genius with the secret everyone knew but no one dared to say. Marlon Brando was not just an actor, he was a revolution. With his intense realism in films like A Streetcar Named Desire on the Waterfront and The Godfather, he shattered the artificial style of old Hollywood and brought raw emotion to the screen. He was celebrated as the ultimate symbol of masculine power, the brooding rebel who didn't follow rules and didn't care about fame. Audiences believed every word he said, every look he gave, because he made acting feel like truth. Yet the greatest irony of Marlon Brando's life was that while he was praised for bringing authenticity to cinema, he was simultaneously forced to hide major parts of his identity in real life. Hollywood adored his talent, but it had no room for his complexity. The same system that crowned him king also demanded silence. Throughout the 1950s and 1960s, Brando had highly publicized relationships with famous actresses such as Rita Moreno, Anna Kashfi, and Movita Castaneda. The media portrayed him as a seductive ladies' man, fathering multiple children and breaking hearts along the way. But behind the scenes, Brando's romantic life was far more fluid than the public ever knew. Numerous insiders claimed he had affairs with men including fellow actors, directors, and industry power players. One of the most persistent rumors involved James Dean, the rebellious icon who also challenged Hollywood norms. The idea that the two most dangerous men in cinema, symbols of raw masculinity, may have been romantically involved sent shockwaves through Hollywood gossip circles. While never confirmed officially, their shared intensity and emotional depth on screen made the rumor both believable and deeply threatening to the studio image. Brando carefully crafted a persona that gave him freedom while hiding the truth. He often dressed casually, rejected Hollywood glamour, and lived on his own island in Tahiti to escape the spotlight. His refusal to play by the rules distracted people from asking deeper questions. "If I don't talk about my private life, you can't expose it," he once hinted. While some insiders knew about his relationships with men, the public remained unaware because the studio crafted a shield of heterosexual scandals to keep attention elsewhere. He became a master at misdirection, allowing the media to focus on his temper, his politics, his weight gain, anything but his identity. His masculinity became his mask. In the 1970s and 80s, as culture slowly shifted, Brando began to drop hints about his true self. Finally, in a 1976 interview and again in the 1990s, he admitted, "I have had homosexual experiences." Who hasn't? It was a casual statement, but it confirmed decades of speculation. By then, he was too powerful to be destroyed by the truth. But during his peak, he knew exposure would have ended his career. His story reveals a dark reality. Even the bravest performers in Hollywood had to perform off-camera just to survive. Marlon Brando, the man who taught the world to act with honesty, had been forced to live a lie. And that contradiction remained one of the most painful open secrets in Hollywood history. James Dean, the rebel icon and the high price of fame. James Dean wasn't just a movie star, he was the embodiment of rebellion. In only 3 major films, East of Eden, Rebel Without a Cause, Giant, he redefined the tortured youth archetype and became the voice of a restless generation searching for authenticity in a conformist America. His raw vulnerability, smoldering gaze, and unpredictable energy made him unlike any actor before him. While Hollywood molded leading men into polished fantasies, Dean did the opposite. He brought his internal chaos to the screen and made it art. But behind the legend of the troubled rebel was a young man navigating a ruthless industry that preyed on ambition. To the public, he was the symbol of freedom. In reality, he was playing a dangerous strategic game for survival. Hollywood in the early 1950s was dominated by powerful male executives who controlled casting decisions, careers, and reputations. According to numerous insiders, Dean understood early on that talent alone wasn't enough to break through, and he allegedly formed intimate relationships with influential men who could open doors. One of the most discussed names was Rogers Brackett, a wealthy radio director in his 40s, who met Dean when the actor was still a struggling 20-year-old. Brackett paid his rent, introduced him to elite circles, and helped secure auditions. Industry whispers claimed Dean also had connections with producers and directors who were known to trade roles for companionship. This wasn't romance. It was survival. Dean wasn't naive. He was pragmatically bisexual, using charm and vulnerability as currency in a system designed to exploit desperation. Some called him manipulative. Others called him brilliant. The contradictions in Dean's life were striking. On screen, he was the ultimate outsider. Off-screen, he was navigating back rooms, private parties, and hidden relationships to climb the Hollywood ladder. While the public saw him dating actresses like Pier Angeli, insiders described him as fluid, fearless, and unwilling to define himself. He told friends, "Why limit yourself?" Yet he also understood the stakes. In the 1950s, being exposed as gay or bisexual could end a career instantly. So Dean walked a tightrope, leaning into his rebel persona to distract from his personal life while using powerful connections to accelerate his rise. Some historians believe his bad boy image wasn't just acting, it was a shield. If he looked uncontrollable, no one would question why he didn't follow the normal Hollywood dating script. Then came the twist that changed everything. He died at age 24 in a car crash, just as his fame exploded. His early death froze his image in time, a beautiful, tortured genius gone too soon. And with his death, the rumors that might have destroyed him instead became myth. Hollywood never had the chance to tear him apart. The secrets stayed buried. Instead of scandal, he became eternal. Fans saw him as pure, tragic, misunderstood. The industry rewrote his life into poetry. Johnny Carson later reflected that James Dean may be the greatest example of how death can protect a legacy that truth might have destroyed. The question remains, was James Dean a victim of Hollywood's system, or one of the few who learned how to play it better than anyone else? Marlene Dietrich, the androgynous queen, who lived her truth in a fake world. Marlene Dietrich was unlike any other star Hollywood had ever seen. Born in Germany, she entered American cinema in the 1930s with an aura of danger, intelligence, and exotic mystery that fascinated audiences. She didn't just act, she hypnotized. With her smoky voice, intense eyes, and razor-sharp wit, she embodied a new kind of femininity, powerful, self-possessed, and unapologetic. While other actresses were forced into submissive roles, Dietrich controlled every detail of her image. She didn't chase male approval, men and women chased her. Her androgynous beauty blurred the lines between masculine and feminine, creating a magnetism that both thrilled and threatened Hollywood's rigid norms. She projected elegance and seduction, but she also projected freedom. In a world built on illusions, Marlene Dietrich was dangerously real. What made Dietrich truly revolutionary was her bold approach to gender. At a time when women were expected to wear gowns and smile sweetly, she walked into nightclubs in tailored men's suits, tuxedos, and top hats, and still looked more glamorous than anyone else in the room. She didn't hide her androgyny, she made it iconic. Her famous line, "I am a gentleman at heart," wasn't a joke, it was a declaration. She proved that femininity could include strength, dominance, and sexual control. Hollywood didn't know what to do with her, but audiences couldn't look away. Her fashion choices sparked outrage from censors and praise from avant-garde artists. She became a symbol of defiance not just in movies, but in culture. Her influence can be seen today in stars like Madonna, David Bowie, and Lady Gaga. She didn't just break the rules, she rewrote them. Behind the scenes, Dietrich lived just as boldly. Unlike many of her contemporaries, she made little effort to hide her bisexuality within Hollywood circles. She had romantic relationships with famous men such as John Wayne, French actor Jean Gabin, and writer Éric Maria Remarque. But she was equally involved with women, including actresses like Mercedes de Acosta and writers such as Salka Viertel. Insiders described her as magnetic to both genders. She didn't label herself or apologize. Instead, she used her European sophistication as a shield. American actresses would have been destroyed for the same behavior, but Dietrich's foreign mystique gave her cover. She made ambiguity part of her allure. Instead of denying rumors, she teased them. Instead of hiding her truth, she stylized it. She mastered the art of hiding in plain sight. Even her marriage defied expectations. She wed Rudolf Sieber in 1923, but rather than pretending to be a traditional wife, she built one of Hollywood's earliest open marriages. They remained legally married for more than 50 years, but both pursued other partners. Sieber openly lived with another woman in Europe, while Dietrich continued her affairs with men and women across the globe. Yet they stayed close friends and co-parents, proving that love can exist without possession. Their relationship was not built on jealousy, it was built on mutual freedom. This was unheard of in the 1930s, but Dietrich didn't ask for permission. She lived the way she wanted, consequences be damned. Johnny Carson admired her deeply, calling her one of the few who managed to be both a Hollywood legend and an authentic human being. While others hid behind studio-crafted lies, Marlene Dietrich turned her truth into power and became the ultimate androgynous icon in a world terrified of anyone who refused to fit a box. Raymond Burr, TV's most beloved lawyer who lived a perfect lifetime lie. Raymond Burr was one of the most recognizable faces in American television history. As the brilliant defense attorney in Perry Mason, 1957-1966, and the determined detective in Ironside, 1967-1975, he became a household name for nearly 2 decades. His deep voice, commanding presence, and calm authority made viewers trust him completely. He played heroes who fought for justice, exposed lies, and protected the innocent. But off-screen, Burr was living the opposite reality. The man who portrayed truth-seekers on television spent his entire life constructing one of the most elaborate personal deceptions Hollywood had ever seen. While his characters hunted down dishonesty, Burr himself became a prisoner of it, forced to choose between stardom and authenticity in a world that would never allow both. Unlike other celebrities who kept certain aspects of their lives private, Burr went far beyond silence. He invented an entire fake biography. He claimed to have been married 3 times, even providing names of wives that never existed. In one story, his supposed first wife died in a plane crash. In another, he said they had a 10-year-old son who tragically died of leukemia. None of it was true. He spoke in interviews about serving heroically in World War II and being wounded in combat, but military records proved he never went to war. Every detail of his personal life was carefully crafted to generate sympathy, admiration, and most importantly, to erase any suspicion about his sexuality. Burr didn't just hide the truth, he replaced it with tragedy so powerful that no one dared question him. It was a masterclass in survival, but it came at the cost of living in permanent performance. Behind closed doors, Burr had already found the love of his life. In 1960, on the set of Perry Mason, he met Robert Benavides, an actor and Korean War veteran. The two became inseparable and remained partners for 35 years until Burr's death in 1993. They built an orchid business and later a vineyard, together owned property jointly, and traveled the world as a couple, but always under the guise of business partners. Hollywood insiders knew the truth, but the public never saw it. Burr spoke endlessly about fictional wives and imaginary heartbreaks, while the man who truly loved him had to remain invisible. When Burr died, he left his entire estate to Benavides, confirming what the industry had whispered for decades. Their relationship was real. Everything else was the lie. Johnny Carson, who interviewed Burr many times later, confided to close friends that Burr's story was the most tragic example of Hollywood's cruelty. Unlike stars who hid romantic partners, Burr had to erase his entire identity. He didn't just avoid the truth, he constructed a false life so detailed that he had to memorize every part of it to avoid slipping on air. Carson understood the psychological torture of living that way. The man who played Perry Mason, the champion of truth, had been forced to live in fear of his own. Carson believed Burr represented the darkest side of Hollywood, a system so unforgiving that a man who brought joy to millions felt he had no choice but to lie forever. In the end, Raymond Burr solved countless fictional cases about justice, but never received justice in his own life. Charles Laughton and Elsa Lanchester, the 30-year double lavender marriage. Charles Laughton and Elsa Lanchester were once seen as one of Hollywood's most stable and sophisticated couples. Married in 1929 and together for 33 years until Laughton's death in 1962, they presented themselves as a refined artistic duo. Laughton, an Academy Award-winning actor known for The Hunchback of Notre Dame mutiny on the bounty and witness for the prosecution, was widely regarded as one of the finest character actors of his generation. Lanchester, the iconic bride of Frankenstein, charmed audiences with her eccentric wit and memorable performances. To the outside world, they were the perfect example of a long-lasting marriage in an industry where most relationships collapsed within years. But behind this elegant facade was one of Hollywood's most carefully maintained secrets. Their union was not a love story, it was a pact. Both Laughton and Lanchester were surrounded by persistent rumors about their sexuality. Many within the industry believed Laughton was gay, a truth Lanchester later confirmed indirectly by describing him as not very interested in the opposite sex. He lived in fear of exposure in a time when being openly gay meant the end of a career and possibly imprisonment. Lanchester, meanwhile, was rumored to have romantic relationships with women, especially during the early years of her career in London's avant-garde theater scene. Their marriage therefore became a mutual shield, a lavender arrangement that protected both of them from scandal. By marrying each other, they constructed a socially acceptable facade that allowed them to move freely in a dangerous industry while maintaining privacy over their true identities. Unlike many studio-arranged marriages that were cold or short-lived, the Laughton-Lanchester partnership was uniquely successful. They genuinely cared for each other and built a life based on trust, creativity, and loyalty rather than romantic passion. They acted together in films and stage productions, supported each other's careers, and even shared the same agent. Lanchester once said, "We were companions, and that companionship proved more enduring than many conventional marriages." They found comfort in their shared secret, and rather than living double lives in misery, they created a safe space within the walls of their home. Their dynamic was not traditional, but it worked because it was honest between them, even if it had to be dishonest to the world. What made their marriage extraordinary was how well it protected them in a brutal era. Lawton was able to become a respected actor without facing the public humiliation that destroyed others. Lanchester maintained independence without being pressured into a stereotypical Hollywood wife role. Their union allowed both to avoid constant questioning from reporters and maintain careers for decades. Even after Lawton's death, Lanchester guarded his legacy, never publicly outing him, showing the depth of their bond. Johnny Carson later reflected that their relationship was one of the most sophisticated survival strategies in Hollywood history, neither tragic nor loveless, but deliberately constructed and astonishingly strong. While many stars lied out of fear, Charles Lawton and Elsa Lanchester built a partnership out of intelligence. They turned a fabricated marriage into a lifetime of mutual respect, proving that sometimes the most fake unions were more loyal and enduring than the real ones. Tyrone Power, Hollywood's most beautiful man, and the darkness behind the glamour. Tyrone Power was the ultimate matinee idol, the face that defined Fox Studios' golden era. With his flawless features, expressive eyes, and effortless charm, he became the #1 romantic leading man of the 1930s, 40s, and early 50s. He dazzled audiences in swashbuckling hits like The Mark of Zorro Blood and Sand and the Black Swan, while also proving his range in powerful dramas such as Witness for the Prosecution. Women lined up outside theaters just to see him on screen. Fan clubs formed worldwide. His name appeared constantly in magazines and studios, marketed him as the epitome of masculine fantasy. But behind the carefully crafted image of the perfect lover was a man trapped in a role he never auditioned for, forced to perform straightness as convincingly off-screen as he did on it. Tyrone Power didn't just act in films, he acted in life. To maintain the illusion of the ideal leading man, Power entered multiple high-profile marriages that served as convenient shields. His first marriage to French actress Annabella lasted from 1939 to 1948 and was heavily promoted as a glamorous international romance. After their divorce, he married Mexican beauty Linda Christian in 1949 in one of the most publicized Hollywood weddings of the decade, broadcast globally and attended by major stars. They had 2 daughters before splitting. His third and final marriage was to Deborah Ann Menardos in 1958, only months before his death. On paper, these unions painted the portrait of a passionate heterosexual man who loved women. But insiders claimed these relationships were not driven by desire, but by necessity. These marriages were protection, not passion. They kept the world from asking dangerous questions. Rumors circulated throughout Hollywood that Tyrone Power had secret relationships with men, especially during his early career and while serving in the Marines during World War II. Several biographies and industry insiders hinted that Power was bisexual, but unlike Marlon Brando, he never publicly acknowledged it. He moved carefully, arranging private meetings in European locations and relying on extreme discretion. Friends said he constantly feared exposure. One scandal could end his career overnight. In an era when studios controlled every aspect of a star's life, even slight suspicion could be deadly. Like many of his peers, Power was forced to construct 2 separate identities: the adored heartthrob the public worshipped, and the real man who craved freedom but could never risk being seen. What made his situation uniquely painful was that his beauty became his prison. The more the public idolized his looks, the less room he had to be human. He wasn't allowed flaws, vulnerability, or authenticity. He had to remain the fantasy. The studio demanded constant charm, romance, and heterosexual perfection. He carried that burden everywhere on set at premieres, even in his personal interactions. The price of stardom was silence. Tragically, at the height of his career, Power collapsed of a heart attack at age 44 while filming a dueling scene for Solomon and Sheba in 1958. His sudden death froze him in time as eternally youthful, eternally desirable, eternally mysterious. And because he died before cultural attitudes changed, the truth of his life remained in shadows. Johnny Carson later reflected that Tyrone Power may be the most tragic of them all, not because he lost his life too soon, but because Hollywood never allowed him to fully live it. Hollywood built legends on charm, beauty, and illusion, but behind the glittering spotlight, countless stars were forced to sacrifice their true identities just to survive. These icons shaped culture, broke box office records, and defined masculinity and romance for generations. Yet many lived in fear that one exposed secret would erase everything. Johnny Carson saw the truth up close, not as gossip, but as tragedy. Their pain reveals a disturbing question we still face today. Did we love the real people or the characters Hollywood scripted for them? Now the debate begins. In 2025, is the industry finally ready to let its legends live honestly, or are we still clinging to beautiful lies?